dedicated to which event? The coronation of King George VI. Mr. Benag, the estate located north of the intersection of Fanshawe Park Road and Richmond serves as the official residence of Western's Vice Chancellor. What is its name? Gibbons Lodge. On the Western Center for Feminist Research is located in the derelict basement of which building?
Middlesex.
Somerville. And finally, what is the name of the garden located between the University College and Stevenson Lawson Hall? The Beryl Ivy Serenity Garden. All right, thank you. None of those questions really have a real answer, but all the best. Okay, so now that we have everyone up at the front, I was wondering if the two slates would take just a quick moment, just 1 minute, to summarize their platforms with as many buzzwords as possible for the audience here tonight.
Absolutely. I hope that buzzword thing was sarcastic. So, first of all, as I mentioned at the outset of this debate, we have three main pillars of our platform. That is financial responsibility, making students' lives easier, and a municipal focus on advocacy. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the chance to explore these throughout the rest of this debate, but ultimately, we believe that what we have put together is a program that works for students, buzzword, and is getting students the best deal. That's an honest statement.
Thank you. The main point of our platform is we want to make sure that the USC is helping students both inside and outside of the classroom in the best way we can. We want everything the USC does to always go back to that, which is the intended mission statement. Our platform is divided up into 6 sections. Our main one is advocacy. Our second one is the actions we're going to take by ourselves. The third one is how we can burst the Western bubble. The fourth one is how we can outreach better to students. The fifth one is how we can make the USC better, specifically through our internal communications. And the last one is a commitment to the past projects of the USC, not forgetting what the USC has done and making sure we can take the next step to make it even better.
Thank you. And now we're going to start with the Bellman slate. Regarding your team dynamic, how do the three of you make decisions?
I think I can speak for the team that we make decisions as a team. One thing that I know we always do is if we're ever trying to decide a platform point when we were developing our platform or if we're discussing an issue, we're always open to hearing each other's ideas and finding what we think the best consensus is. And I think that's a good strategy because not one person can ever have the best perspective, but I think having 3 perspectives, and if we can come to an agreement on something, I think it means that we're probably going to have a better possible idea for what's best for students in general.
Thank you, Mr. Helpman.
Sure. Usually the way we come to a decision on something is I will say something relatively outlandish. They will bring me back down to level, and then we'll meet somewhere in the middle. So ultimately our slate dynamic is one in which we do have differing perspectives. We come from different parts of campus. But ultimately, we do our best to try and come to some sort of consensus. At the same time, we do recognize that we're 3 distinct people running for 3 distinct positions, and we will disagree on things from time to time. This is a natural fact, and we just try and do our best to get along really well.
Basically, Matt found Emily and I to keep him on track. We try and do a good job of that, but him being a little bit outrageous to make sure that we have the best of all possible abilities to make sure that we're doing the best for you guys.
Thank you. And this one's for the Helpman slate first. How do the USC executives justify making approximately $40,000 per year, which is more than most graduate students and adjunct professors at Western?
How do they justify it by working hard for students? The fact of the matter is, you talk to any USC executive member, they're working 50, 60 hours a week. This is a hard job. They're not getting paid hourly, they're getting paid by a contract. The question is, though, not how generally we can justify this, but rather how we as an executive can be consistently working for students to make sure that they're getting the best deal out of the representative they're paying for. Ultimately, one of the ways in which we can justify this is making sure that we are for Western first, and that before we look for any sort of position on an external body, that we are making sure we are in line with Western priorities and working for Western students here in London and here at Western.
Thank you.
I'd have to especially for all the council meetings they have to attend, which luckily this year aren't going nearly as late as when I was a councilor back a couple of years ago. But I think it just exemplifies the amount of work and the amount of effort that all of them put in office. And I think the amount they make, it's definitely worth what they give to the students at Western. And I think that it's not about justifying how much they make. We see the results of their actions every day. If it weren't for a really committed USC executive, the Western wouldn't be what it is today.
Thank you. This one's to the Bellman slate first. Only the second slate election. Do you think this system is beneficial for voters, and is it a good idea for the USC?
At first, when the slate system first came in, I had my questions, I think just like everyone else. And I think this year is the real experiment, but I know with my slate, coming together, finding the best people for the jobs with the best experience, I think that ultimately it's going to be better for students. And I know already I'm hearing whispers of people who want to run in next year. They're already building their slates. There's some growing pains with the slate system, but I think in the end it's going to be best for students.
Thank you, Sheldon.
As the mover of the slate motion on council last year, I do strongly support the slate. And I think what you see is while we've lost some breadth in terms of we see only 2 candidates, what we have done is increase the depth of the conversation that we're having. So before the slate, for those who might not know, the 5 other vice president positions were elected internally. So what we've done really is brought the conversation of the internal and external to the forefront, and we can really have a more detailed conversation of what the USC is doing. So ultimately, while we may not have, like I said, the breadth of ideas, we're really bringing more ideas to the forefront, and we're really be able to work well as a team now that we've established the slate system. So I think it is an effective tool, and I think it's been working well so far.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to shift gears for a little bit right here. I have a question directed to the Healthman slate. I wanted you to explain exactly what exactly you're talking about in your platform regarding mental health in residences. Firstly, what do you mean by literature, and how is your platform point different than what resident staff and SOFs already do?
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
Yeah. What exactly do you mean by literature, and how is your platform point different than what resident staff and SOFs already do?
It's actually not entirely different from what they do already. It's more so that at the RNs right now have phenomenal training to deal with issues of mental health specifically. But I really just think it's partnering with housing and having a very open dialogue with them to see what they're doing and how we can help partner with them on different initiatives. We have the Peer Support Center and the network, and they do fantastic things. And we're reaching past just the basement of the UCC and our current reach and working with residences in the way that housing does the same things. I think can be really, really effective.
Thank you. Now I have a question specifically for the Bellman slate. On your accountability platform, you propose working with government and other external bodies to improve opportunities for internships and co-ops. There's currently no regulation at the provincial or federal level at this moment. Do you not think that this warrants attention first before throwing students into these opportunities?
I assume by that you mean getting the Employment Standards Act applied to unpaid internships, which is something that's in the process of being done right now. There are still moves that need to be made. We made some progress this year applying the Health and Safety Act to co-ops and internships. But I feel like students who are in the non-traditional business that don't get those work integrated learning opportunities, I feel like everybody wants the opportunity to apply what they learn and apply their knowledge. And I think that's important for students who don't usually get those opportunities and that need to do that moving forward for both their personal growth and their career.
Thank you. So first, the Bellman slate will have the first opportunity to answer the following question, but it is directed to both of them. Last year's winning slate, Team Whalen, had a tech-heavy platform, providing new idea forums, involvement compasses, and even a USC app. How do you see technology facilitating democracy for USC? And to what extent is it important to involve Western students in developing and implementing said technology?
First off, I think that technology, especially some of the initiatives brought forward by the Team Wayland, there's incredible opportunities to use them. And I think, unfortunately, we haven't seen a lot of that realized yet. We've seen the involvement compass come out, but the idea forum hasn't fully launched yet. And also the USC app hasn't realized yet. But if you look at our platform, we do have a commitment to using some of these past projects, and we talk specifically about these three things. We want to extend the involvement compass, see if we can bring in USC positions, other volunteer positions at Western, and even use it as a tool to tell people opportunities when they're not specifically looking for it. So if the USC election is coming up and commissioner applications are going out, we can send someone an email based on the way they answered questions when they use the involvement compass the first time. And using the idea form, I think it lives or dies in the next executive, and we really want to make it a priority to use that. It's definitely really important in engaging students. Students use technology, students are online, and I think that there's a lot of great opportunities.
Thank you. Mr. Halvin? Yes, you certainly can.
And I'll ask a question. I mean, you point out the fact that the executive needs to be using these technological tools. However, the point of these tools is for students to use them. How do you intend to have students use them if they're not already doing it? I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's not up to us to decide what students want to use. They do it. So when you say that we need to be using it as an executive, I'm just a little confused on that. I'd like some clarification.
I mean that we need to prioritize, it seems. The idea form hasn't launched yet, and I think students want to use it. We saw a lot of use last year during the campaigns. The point is we need to use it in the sense that we need to actively let students know about it and actively use the responses of things like the idea form. If we're not doing that, then we're not doing our due diligence in hearing back from students.
Thank you. Excellent. Yeah.
Technically, it's only one question.
Okay. Technicalities.
It's all right. All right, but you do get to be the first one.
Did you get to answer the question?
Sorry?
Did you get to answer the question?
Yes, you get to be the first one to answer this question. So.
No, sorry, I get an opportunity to answer the question you posed.
Oh, okay.
The tech heavy platform.
Gojo, what's the ruling on this one?
Well, yes, if you didn't get a chance, I'll answer the question.
Okay, fantastic. I'll do that. I apologize. I was ruffling through my notes here, so I'll full disclosure.
I find the reliance on a tech-heavy platform to be highly problematic for a number of reasons. The FIM students in the audience may appreciate this when I say that. Wayland's platform will largely rely on the idea form as a form of techno-utopianism. We can't really create community through technology. What we need to be doing is taking a step back and looking at more on-the-ground communication. I mean, the fact of the matter is, sending an email to a student based on their involvement compass response and that they may be interested in running for a position is not nearly as good as setting up a booth in the atrium with a bunch of nomination forms. The fact of the matter is, the reason why Charity Ball sells out every year is because they have their volunteers writing Charity Ball on every spoke bag and promoting the crap out of it. We don't do that because we think the idea form is going to do it for us. The fact is, we cannot rely on these tech solutions to be doing the job of communications for us. We need to be putting ourselves in USC colors, standing in the atrium, and proudly communicating with students face to face.
If I can rebut that as well. Just a question for you, Max. You're saying that the idea forum and other technology is not an important component of hearing back from students.
It's certainly not the #1 priority. And I am proud to say that because the fact of the matter is that if students aren't necessarily using these things, there's a reason for that. I mean, we can't just jump ahead, and I just mentioned we need to be focusing more on on-the-ground communication. These can be a valuable tool should students decide to use them. The marketplace of students have dictated that they may not want to use these things. We can't simply rely on them and hope that they will do their job.
Thank you. You'll have the first opportunity to answer this kind of question. If you could only implement one thing on your platform, what would it be and why?
I would implement the fee freeze, and I would do it immediately at the next council budget if I possibly could. The reason for this is it is a silent gesture to students that we are going to be responsible with their funding, and that we will not only respect, but revere their financial contributions. Ultimately, the fee freeze increase is aimed at simply the USC base fee, which is $77 out of the $661 that all students pay. Realistically, what this will do is prevent us from making any decisions like the one of putting all those blank TVs up there that's likely going to cost some increased maintenance fees down the road after we've made the capital investment. We cannot be making capital investments without considering what the long-term implications are. A fee freeze on the USC base fee will prevent that. It will be a silent gesture to students and ultimately will lead the USC in the right direction.
If I can just ask a question based on that. Matt, in your platform, you do talk about the fee freeze, and you talk about implementing a fee freeze and then trying to find efficiencies within the USC. The problem is that those efficiencies aren't with capital investments. That doesn't come from the yearly base fee. Right now, the USC executive is looking at how to, they're already looking at how to make sure that the USC fee doesn't increase without an increase in service. So how do you think a freeze is really going to make a difference, other than possibly removing services from students in the short term and handcuffing the next year's USC executive?
Yeah, I don't buy that argument of handcuffing whatsoever. I think the fact of the matter is that we need to be forecasting our finances in such a way that we will not be relying on an increase that's unnecessary at the end of the day. Often what we'll see, and just like we saw last year, was a $2 fee increase for a decision that was made politically to make the conference rooms better. The conference room, that's awesome, that's great, we made a capital investment, but at the end of the day, we increased the fee because we didn't foresee the maintenance costs. Realistically, this amount pales in comparison to what students pay in tuition, and what they pay in ancillary fees and the rest of USC fees. But ultimately, to look at efficiencies and to simply ponder about it is not good enough. The fee freeze will force us to really question the activities that we are doing, not just look at it. And ultimately, we're not trying to make any sort of arbitrary cuts because it's implemented with comprehensive service reviews along the way.
I got 32 seconds from there. Where to go? Now, this is a question directed.
Excuse me, sorry, Mr. Speaker, we didn't get a chance to answer that question.
I'm sorry? Oh, my apologies. I'm really losing it up here. Mr. Bowman.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, awesome. Just want to touch on something that I spoke about when I was on here with Emily, and that is the sense that the university is growing, it's expanding with more students. That means a larger base of students that need support. And we firmly do believe that an arbitrary fee freeze, for the sake of having a fee freeze, is going to handcuff the USC and the services that it provides. If this university is growing at an exponential rate, we need to make sure that services are expanding to accommodate the new students on campus. Like Brian just said, the USC is currently finding efficiencies in the way that it operates, and we need to make sure that going forward, the services that we offer as an institution, as an organization, reflect the needs of students. And saying that we're going to freeze fees just because we want to take a closer look at things doesn't add up. We need to make sure that students are getting the support that they need. And on top of that, a fee freeze is a decision to be had by council. We need to make sure that we're involving counselors in such a decision, and I'm sure Matt will agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're correct that it is a decision the council needs to make. We tried to make the decision last year. It was shot down by 3 votes at a budget meeting that went until 4:30 in the morning. Additionally, if you take a look at the fee schedule, what I'm talking about is the USC base fee, which has nothing to do with the mental health services that you're talking about. We are talking specifically about the fees that the USC controls directly. This is only about 12%. It's a small amount. I told you it pales in comparison to the total amount. But what we're doing is taking a stance right now that we are going to do what we can to turn the USC into a more financially responsible organization. And that's the fact.
I have 30 seconds.
If you'd like.
I understand that we're referring to the USC base fee, and I'm just talking in a broader sense about the fact that the USC has to step up and take responsibility for some of the services that it provides with regards to things like mental health. The USC has things like the Peer Support Center, the Peer Support Network, and the entire internal portfolio that operates services that address these issues. And students have come to rely on us for this. We can't freeze fees while students are rushing into the school and say that we're just going to keep things the way they are. Students have come to rely on these services, and it's our obligation as an organization to make them as good as they could possibly be. And freezing fees, just shackles the ability of the USC exec to make sure that we're providing those services internally.
Thank you. All right, and the last question that I have, unless there are any more that are pending. Nope, okay, I can't ask this as the last question. The last question is directed to the two presidential candidates specifically. And I was wondering if you could walk us through an average imaginary day and what you think you'd be spending your time doing as president.
An average imaginary day, and maybe I'm speaking in an ideal world, as I know Pat always is a very busy guy, but on an average day at the USC, I'd like to come into the office, and the first thing I do is walk down into the UCC atrium and talk to a few students. Not everyone, but I want to see, talk to a few students and see what their issues they are having that day. Just to remind myself every single day that I might not be a student that year, but that there are still students on the ground, and that will give me a good perspective for the rest of the day and whatever meetings I might have, that I make sure that I'm fighting for students properly and always putting students first and trying to make their lives better both inside and outside of the classroom.
The first thing I do when in an imaginary day when I walk into the office is answer any and all emails that I have. We put on our platform, we mentioned that we will pledge to answer any email within a 3 business day period. We think this is a very important part of the job. If you talk to a city councilor, what they will say is they wake up at 6:30 in the morning and they answer emails for an hour and a half. Realistically, being responsive as an executive is a very, very important part of the job. We cannot overlook the banal kind of tasks that really make the job work. Ideally, I mean, in an imaginary world after that, I'd go and eat breakfast at the Spoke, because the Spoke is wonderful, and I do what I can to solve problems. I mean, realistically, the best president is one who has to do nothing because they have delegated and set the terms for the organization in a perfect way. So in an imaginary perfect day, I answer the emails and then eat Spoke bagels because I've done a perfect job organizing the organization.
Thank you. Now, interestingly, by night, I have a feeling both candidates would have responded to fighting crime, but I'd like to hear what you're doing during the day for us on the payroll. So, the next question is, do you think that student apathy towards elections is an issue? And if so, how would you address it? Mr. Halpern?
Student apathy towards elections, it certainly is an issue, and I think the reason, you can't force people to be interested in something. Realistically, what we need to be doing is building a community in the USC that really works, and I think if you look at our platform, we have some very specific ideas on how we can build this community and build a brand at the USC. When we don't give back to students, when we don't give something worthwhile, other than broad advocacy points that are kind of have our head in the clouds, we don't have anything tangible that we're giving to students. If you look at what we have on our platform, we're looking at diversifying our programming to really deliver students a high quality academic and entertaining events that we think will ultimately get students more interested in the USC when they realize that we're not just squandering money.
Thank you. Mr. Bellman?
Ultimately, whenever someone says student apathy, I cringe. I hate framing any discussion in student apathy because I think it leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we're measuring and talking about student apathy by what we see in elections or what we see in anything else the USC does, we're doing ourselves a disservice. What we really need to think about is how can we not make students care about, how do we find the issues that students already care about, and how do we tackle those issues? How do we find students, go to where they are, and make sure that students want to get involved. Students do care. Maybe I'm an optimist, but I really think students do care. And I think that it's ultimately our responsibility to be talking about the things that they care about. We can't expect them to understand all the acronyms of the USC or everything else that we talk about. But I do think that they have a vested interest in their future, and so if we talk about them, they will.
Thank you. Yes, you may.
So you made mention of the fact that we need to be talking about things students care about. What on your platform are you going to do for students that they're going to care about?
I think one of my favorite platform points is something that I borrowed from the Science Student Council, and it's the wiki idea. Science Student Council has SciWiki, and it's essentially a space where all course content, including how the course is taught, how it's evaluated, course descriptions and textbook are all there. I want to expand that to Western so that any Western student could find course content for any course at Western, but also expand it to any service that Western or the USC offers, even things like what is Concrete Beach, because when I was a first-year student, I had no idea what concrete beach was, and I had to learn that. So I think something that we really want to do for students and that will help every single student at Western is having one space that they could find the answer to any single question they could have about Western. They can go to this site, they can go to this wiki space and find the answer and find the tools they need to solve the problem.
Thank you. That will do. The next question, first to Mr. Bowman. How do you plan to centralize the services at Western with respect to mental health services, such as the differing services provided by students from the Student Development Center or Student Health?
This is still slate.
Right. I'm going to reread that with my best interpretation of it. If this is your question and I'm getting it totally wrong, jump up and yell. How do you plan on supporting the centralization of services with respect to what Western has in mental health? And there's a reference to the differing services of Student Development Center and Student Health Services.
In terms of centralization, I think it's really important to address the fact that there are, again, as I said, I feel like a broken record, there are a lot of different services on campus that address student needs, and inevitably with various student services there's going to be overlap, and I think it comes down to advocacy. It comes down to getting into a room with the various parties that have control over executing programs relevant to student mental health and student welfare and saying, look, we have a number of services. There is a little bit of overlap. Can we find some efficiencies? And that's where, a VP student life or a dean of students would come in. Someone to be able to maybe say, this is happening here, it's not necessarily happening here, and it should be. Let's transfer that. It comes down to making sure that, SDC right now takes a look at psychology, whereas student health services takes a look at psychiatry. Can we house the two together so student health services can focus primarily on the physical health of students? It's about trimming the fat. It's about making sure that there's ease of access for all students to all mental health resources on campus, and it comes down to conscious effort around the advocacy table and around the table of administration. Thank you.
I think the most important part about this question is the definition of the word centralization. Looking at centralizing all of our student services in terms of mental health, I see it actually being very problematic if you're defining centralization as being all in one location. I've talked to a couple of students about this, and one of the things that they've said is that the fact that our mental health services are anonymous and are on the fourth floor of the student services building is one of the huge benefits of the service. So in terms of centralization, I think what we need to focus on is centralizing access, and that's why we talk about in our platform centralizing the committees that talk about mental health. Right now, the USC has a committee that the VP Internal sits on with administration. King's has a separate committee, as well as other ones around campus, and really just centralizing the conversation about it is how we can centralize access. The services specifically, they don't belong being centralized. But in terms of access, that's where we need to provide students with that centralization. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I should clarify what I meant by centralization. I didn't mean physically housing all of the support services at Western in one building, because I agree, it's problematic. I meant giving oversight for all of the student welfare services to one person that would have oversight over all of the services. So we're making sure that we're not repeating services in different places, so that we're not offering the same service in different departments across the school. And it all comes back to making sure that things are working well for students and that it's functioning properly. So I think I should have clarified that. I didn't mean one building. Thank you.
I agree with that, and I think that's something that Sam has done exactly an attempt to do that. I know that she's looking at doing something called a no wrong door policy, so that when students walk into any access point on campus and ask for help, they're making sure that they're getting it. And I think that's exactly how we decentralize the services, and that's something that the executive done this year, and hopefully it will be implemented, but if not, that's exactly the way that I want to centralize the services, so that students, no matter where they're looking, if they're asking for help, we make sure that they get it, because that's the most important part.
Thank you. The next question will first go to the Health and Slate. Due to a few unfortunate events regarding safety on campus, fire at the tennis courts, and the assault at the Starbucks at Ivy, what do you feel is the USC's role to ensure student safety, and what steps will you take to promote it?
I think fighting crime at night would be a good time. This would be appropriate for that. Realistically, I think that what the USC can do to ensure safety on campus is making sure that students are aware of the services that are available to them